I think it's a bit of a myth that kids need to be quote unquote socialized with kids their age.
I'm like extremely spread thin right now professionally, and it is coming up sideways for me in a lot of ways.
My biggest stress always is kind of financial concern. Am I going to be able to make the money that I want to make to provide the life that I want to provide for them?
My first act of construction was deconstruction because I was like, wait a second, y'all aren't fucking doing anything around here.
And the mind wants to get you wrapped up in it so fast. It will take you down in a heartbeat.
I was preparing a list of excuses mentally for why I couldn't create the outcome that I was hired to create.
All manifestation starts with thought. So if you're sitting there in this rabbit hole, wormhole of horrible thoughts, you're not going to find that way out to start a new manifestation. Like, okay, I lost this client. That happened. Big deal. Let's move on to whatever the next thing I want to manifest. Well, welcome back to
another episode of the Logan
and Faiez Show.
Let's do it.
All right.
How you been?
Good.
We skipped last week.
We did skip last week. That was nice, actually, to have a little week off.
Did you like refill a little bit? Get some time to reflect?
I did. Lots of reflection. Because last week was the eclipse, right? Last Monday?
Was it last Monday?
Or Saturday?
Where were you? Were you here?
Yeah, we were at our house. It was great. We just got to sit in our front yard, and both kids woke up like right before it went down. I had a feeling they would. I was like, they're just going to wake up. There's going to be energy going down, and they're just going to wake up.
Was it nap time? It happened.
Yeah, it was nap time. Totality was at like 1:30.
Yeah.
Baby girl typically goes down around noon. Atlas usually goes down around any time between noon and 1. So Atlas had a little shorter nap, but yeah, they both.
I thought Atlas was at school.
Not on that day. That was Monday.
5 days a week.
No, he's only Tuesday, Thursdays.
Oh, cool.
I think it's a bit of a myth that kids need to be quote unquote socialized with kids their age. In fact, a lot of the research and books that Casey and I have read, I want to build the secure attachment with the parent figure. Like they don't need to be around kids that much to be socialized with them.
Totally.
That's just, now their personality might be that it takes a little longer for them to warm up to kids, or whatever you might see when you think they're not being social. That doesn't mean they need to be socialized. It just means they take a little longer to warm up to kids. So, but I would prefer that they spend more time with the family unit than with other kids.
Yeah, I think it's overrated. Like, learning from people your age. You can learn from people of all ages.
No, I'd rather they learn from very self-aware adults as opposed to crazy kids. One family, they took the kid out because he was just like learning too many bad habits. Like lots of biters, like little things we would catch that Atlas picks up. And we're like, he's not getting that at home, so he's getting it at school, but it's only 2 days a week instead of 3 or 5. So I'm like, it's fine. He's with us the majority of the time. Or with Nanny. And Maymay's great.
Maymay?
Yeah, her nickname's Maymay. Megan.
That makes sense. Have you ever seen the graph of how much time you spend with your kids at different ages, or spend with your parents?
I've not seen a graph for it. Which one are you referencing?
It's going to ruin you a little bit, but it's like you spend like 24 hours a day, when they're 0 years old. And then, they become 3, 4, 5, and that goes down because they're going to school for 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day. By the time they're teenagers, they have after school activities. So now you're down to like 10 hours a day. Then they leave. And now you're spending like maybe a couple of hours a week or a month. And then as you age, you're like now calculating, like I spend hours with my parents per month, maybe.
I mean, I'm in another state, so I don't even spend, totally. I spend hours a year with my parents.
I'm getting these numbers wrong, but I'll send you the visual. And it was like, it made me pause and think about how valuable the time that I have with my parents is. Because I only see them like for a handful of days or maybe a couple of weeks.
But they're in Houston, right?
Year. No, they live overseas.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they live in Dubai for the last.
Yeah, so me and you are pretty similar. We don't
years.
get to see them very often.
Very often. Like I'll see them in June for like 10 days. And then I probably wouldn't, I may not see them for the rest of the year.
I've been seeing my mom a lot more. She comes to visit and help with the kids a lot, which is nice. She'll be here in May. It actually landed great. She's going to be here for Mother's Day.
Are your parents retired?
Semi, like, they still like to stay busy. My sister essentially runs a school district. I believe, I was talking about this with somebody else. I believe she's like basically one step below a superintendent of a school district. So she is the boss of like lots of principals, essentially. And so my mom will go and like be the lunch lady in the elementary schools of that district, which is great for her. She just pops in and out. Of course, it starts out as like, hey, I'm just here to help out part-time. And then they're like, they love her. Totally. Every job my mom has ever had, the people love her.
Yeah.
And so then it part-time turns into like full-time pretty fast.
I mean, that's great. I think you got to have something that you do, and being around people is like so good for your health at all ages, but especially that age.
Yeah. And then my dad for the last 10 years has basically just been in a general contractor. Like he does a lot of remodeling projects for friends and different clients and stuff. He just built a great client list and referral list.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
My dad has like an immigrant story, right? So he came here for college and worked his way up, yada, yada. When I left for college, he started like getting the big assignments in his career, and that took him overseas. So ever since I graduated high school, they've lived overseas. So I've only seen him for like 1 to 2 weeks per year.
How has that shifted your relationship with them?
I think it's good. I mean, for, my late teenage and 20s, it gave us distance, and I had to grow up and all that stuff. But now I'm like, I'm ready for him to retire in the next couple of years, hopefully. Yeah. And I also want to be in a position where like, I know that he's working for a few extra years right now because he needs to save money in order to retire the way that they want to. Mm-hmm. And I want to, be in a position. I don't know that all kids want this, but I want to be in a position where I can be like, Dad, like here. Yeah. What do you need? Yeah. Retire in the house that you want to, right? Like live how you like. You've earned it. Whatever I am is a consequence of how you raised me. I obviously had to build myself to an extent, but like the way that you're forming the foundation of Atlas, like they built the foundation of me. So all of my success is their success. And I believe that. And I'm just like ready. Like I have visions of just like giving my mom a credit card. Like do whatever the fuck you want, Mom. Like I love having little visions of that. And I told my dad that the other day, and he's like, son, whether you actually give me any money or not, the fact that you have that thought means the world to me, and that's enough. That's
cool. So. That's cool. Distance was good for me too in my 20s because I moved to Austin at 25, and I had to get away. It was time to figure out what I was like made of. Mm-hmm. I think for me there was just this comfort of being around my parents, and so there wasn't motivation to grow. I was in my bubble, whether that was a friend bubble and a family bubble. In Portland, I think distance is good.
I also love travel for that reason, getting out of my bubble. Like even here, I've made my own life in Austin, but I can get so in the bubble of my own life that even if I go to Houston or go to Chicago or whatever it may be, all of a sudden I get some perspective on how small the things that I'm a part of are. And I'm like, it motivates me. Mm-hmm. It gives me a fresh perspective on what I'm doing. And I always come back rejuvenated for that reason.
Yeah, I'm the same with Casey whenever we travel.
Well, what did you say? Your comfort zone in Portland. So pretty sure post-eclipse, you're shattering some comfort zones. I'm shattering some comfort zones. So in an effort to always be striving to be better, I always like to recognize not only what I can improve, but what I'm proud of. Mm-hmm. So the thing that I'm proud of myself for in the last week is I posted a clip from one of our episodes yesterday about fear and going inwards. And so a little bit of context, I'm like extremely spread thin right now professionally. And it is coming up sideways for me in a lot of ways because I feel like I'm underperforming because I'm spread thin. I not only hate underperforming, I hate being perceived as an underperformer. It makes me lash out. And so I am responsible for a big team at my company. I'm the COO, so everything, like I was hired to be like, you need to make sure that everything goes right? So that the CEO and founder can go be creative. So everything is my fault. And then like literally in Q1, Q2, our roadmaps are like, my success is measured by everybody else hitting their goals. My goal cascades down, and I'm like, Jesus, okay. And then I'm fractional CMO at this startup in town. So they are currently at like 6 million. They're trying to get to 10 million, and they're about to run out of cash in 6 weeks. And I was brought on a couple of months ago to change the trajectory of their story so that they can raise their next round of financing. And so I'm like supposed to lead growth. And I came in and found out that their marketing team of 8, it's now a marketing team of 2. My first act of construction was deconstruction, because I was like, wait a second, y'all aren't fucking doing anything around here. So that's 2. Then I'm using my income to invest in the business that my wife and I just started. And so I'm working on that early morning, at night, and then I'm working on what we're doing. I feel like I'm dropping balls all over the place. So on Friday, I get an email from the CEO of the company that I'm helping turn around. And it was like all the things that she was like, you came in and you basically told me that I don't have a marketing team, and you've like deconstructed it, but I don't know how to rebuild it. And these are all the things that like need to happen. And like, what's the plan for this? And what's the plan for this? And what's the plan for that? And the thing is, I know the position she's in because the board is like looking for replacements for her. So she's taking out all her anxiety on me right now. And my initial reaction was like, you fucking moron. Like, the reason we're in this position is because of you. And like all this stuff was coming up for me. And I like didn't want to look at the email. My reaction was like, I don't fucking want to be involved in this shit. Like, I want to quit. So the first thing I did was I wrote a response, and I just vomited all over the CEO, like said all the nasty things that I wanted to say. And then I saved it in my drafts and I walked away. And I took a quick walk, and in my heart of hearts, I knew that I was preparing a list of excuses mentally for why I couldn't create the outcome that I was hired to create. It wasn't going to work out anyways. Oh, you guys were already in a horrible position. Like, and I was like, I'm actually just scared. I'm scared right now that I'm not going to be able to deliver. And so I'm preparing a list of excuses. And like, I saw that. So I went back several hours later and I cut out all the garbage and I just wrote the factual response. That weekend, I dove in because of what we've talked about in the past. Like, what am I supposed to do when I feel fear? I'm supposed to go straight into the belly of it. There's nothing to it but to do it. So I spent early mornings, late nights over the weekend, and I just dove in. And yesterday, in our one-to-one, she apologized to me. I didn't even say anything. She's like, I completely believe in your vision. Like, you tell me what you need. And I'm like, cool. I mean, at that point, I was already like, I was already committed to doing everything that I can to make it a success. In my head, I kept repeating, like, I'm going to leave this situation better than I found it. Like, no matter what, even if I choose to leave, I'm not going to leave or quit on an impulse. Like, I'm going to do everything that I can to leave it even a little bit better than I found it, even if I choose to leave. And whether she gave me praise or not, like, that was the right mental turnaround that I needed to have. And I'm very proud of myself for that, because I'm trying to go from all these activities that I just described to you, and I'm really trying to reallocate all of my time to the business that we started. But there's timing, and this needs to pick up to a degree to make up for all of this stuff. Almost daily, I want to like give this shit up. I'm like, I don't fucking want to do this. I want to do this. I don't want to do this. I want to do this. The way that I leave things is just as important as how I start them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave all of these situations better than how I found them. And I was just like really proud of myself for getting honest with myself about what my reaction was about and turning my behavior around to like rise to my own standard versus making excuses up for my own bullshit, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what about you? What are you proud of?
Well, it's interesting you brought that up, because it made me think of, so I've had moments in the last year where I don't want to say it's a lack of belief or faith, but rather just impatience with the studio at times. And so I'll convey or share that with Casey, and she'll sometimes feel this lack of safety because I'm like talking about, man, is this going to work? I've put all this money into it. It's not getting the revenue that I want. It's not at capacity. Am I doing the right things? Like, all the thoughts that come through, all the fear that goes through that. And I realize it's this delicate balance of yes, having those thoughts and like what you say, pushing through them and needing to process and share that with my partner, but also probably processing it a little more internally on my own to make sure that my partner doesn't need to feel unsafe by what I might be going through. And it made me think about, because you have a female boss, a CEO, probably the one thing that she really wants to feel the most is just safe in her position, with her company, with the direction, with the vision. And so probably when she heard whatever you had to say about it, I imagine she started to feel safe instead of all the things that you wanted to come at her with, which is typical even in a relationship. You know, like I know when Casey would bring up her frustrations with me, I want to get back at her, like probably about the same way you wrote that email that you put in your draft.
Yep.
So anyway, it just made me think about that. Like safety is such a big thing with the feminine.
That's a great point.
That's the biggest, that's the ultimate thing that they want to feel. They just want to feel safe in their emotions, safe in their relationship, safe in their job, safety. Anyway, that was a complete tangent on that.
That's a good call out. I think that is ultimately what ended up happening. That, and I don't know, you know, whether it's because she's a female or not, whenever anybody sends me an anxiety ridden message or communication, that is what they're asking for. They're asking for a sense of security
And safety.
And if I respond to that with my own sense of insecurity, it's just going to inflame the whole situation.
100%. Yeah.
And so like, yeah, thank you. That is probably why I was proud of myself. I was able to process my own emotions and give the situation what it needed.
Well, it's like what we talked about in a previous episode of just getting to that middle pillar and maintain. Like she brought in the energy of this anxiety frequency. So it's like, how is Faiez going to balance that out by bringing his energy? And you have to bring that calm, grounded energy. What have I been most proud of lately? Honestly, it's my parenting. It's been going really good lately. I feel like nothing tips the scales too far for me right now. Like I feel very grounded. I don't really feel reactive with my kids. I don't even really notice, like Casey told me the other day that baby girl is going through a developmental leap, which means very sensitive, a little more crying, a little more attachment, doesn't want to be put down, needs to be held more, wakes up more often at night. I hadn't even thought about it. I just kind of was like literally in the middle of the night when she's waking up, Casey was like, well, did it seem like a bad night? And I was like, no, I mean, she just kind of woke up a couple times and then fell back asleep. So just the fact that I don't even feel like I'm paying attention to it. If you're not a parent, that might not make sense, but the fact that it's just sort of happening and I'm like, oh, this is just what's going on right now. One measure that I really take and check in with myself on is, what is my energy the second I get home from the studio, that transition state from work to home. And lately I don't feel like there's ever a dip. If anything, I feel like there's a lift in my energy when I get home, like being around my kids and my family. It actually has become easier and easier and easier to remain present with them. Like it's not this conscious effort of, say, not being on my phone or checking a work email. Now it's just not happening. We're doing this thing where we hang out in the front yard a lot more. It's becoming a thing with our neighbors.
Cool.
With the kid across the street. She's the same age as Atlas. And then the other neighbors across the street have a couple older kids that come out and will like play with Atlas a little bit. And I'm finding so much gratitude in that I don't really think about anything else. And so I'm just really proud of my presence as a parent right now and being with them. It's so much fun right now.
I think it's even cooler because we don't need to get into it, but I know that you're stressed out about certain things, and the fact that you're able to be present with them despite that is, I mean, that's reality, right? Like all parents are going to be dealing with stress. And we all know parents or have had parents that brought that stress onto the kid. And the fact that you're at least able to hold that at bay or process it or whatever it may be, I think that's huge.
Thank you. Yeah, that definitely, I would say that's for sure another thing I'm proud of, that I don't bring that to my kids. I don't want to put any of my shit onto them. And I get it. It's tough for parents. I get it. You have a lot of stresses in life and you cannot be a victim to that stress and still be present with your kids.
But like, let's say, you know, that's way easier said than done, right?
100%.
When you're
it
super
is.
stressed about life stuff, it's really easy to be like, oh, I shouldn't be stressed. But like, how do you think you're able to compartmentalize that? And I wonder if it's not, oh, I journal before I get out of the car. It may not be that. It may be a compounding effect of things that you've been doing for a long time that allow you to show up in this moment.
Well, the things that maybe quote unquote could stress me out are things that I have developed that faith muscle in. You know, we talk about it a lot, and that's an ongoing process. There can be peaks and valleys of that faith. I mean, let's be honest here. My biggest stress always is kind of financial concern. Mm-hmm. Am I going to be able to make the money that I want to make to provide the life that I want to provide for them? Mm-hmm. And give us the financial freedom to do the things that we want to do and experience life and not have to be stressed out. And really, no matter how much money you make, your stress is going to be proportionate to what your lifestyle is. So just because somebody makes $300,000 a year as opposed to $60,000 a year, the lifestyles might be different to where you're still having kind of similar stresses.
Basically.
And so I think just being an entrepreneur and building what we're trying to build and create what we're trying to create, I've done it enough that I can sort of see the vision a couple of years down the road of like, okay, we're heading towards it. I do still have those moments like I shared with talking with Casey of some doubt will try to creep in as it always does, but just also finding the gratitude and knowing like, well, we still live a very good life, even though I'm a little stressed about what the studio revenue is, let's say right now. So developing that faith muscle and belief in yourself, I think is different for everybody. But for me, doing the work of combining the mind, the body, the soul, the spiritual work, the heart work, doing it all because it's that work that allows me to continue to just believe in myself. I think the only people that fail are the ones that end up losing belief and faith in themselves that they will accomplish whatever it is they want to accomplish. What's the quote? It's like, the only failure is when you quit. Success will come as long as you keep plugging away at it, and you'll get through those hard times of, say, whatever financial stress I might have right now.
I would have answered it identically. Faith.
It's faith.
It's faith.
It's faith.
I think we could probably try to describe faith in a number of ways, and we've talked about it in the past, which is similar to the sense of self-confidence. Once you do enough hard things, you begin to build a sense of self-belief that you can do and get through hard things, right? And that comes with experience of putting yourself through those things and enduring in a fashion that you have respect for yourself. Then there's also the faith in like a higher power, which is way more esoteric for certain people, and for other people, that's straightforward. Faith in God, I get it. Other people like me earlier in my life, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that means. Like, I don't even know if God exists. So how am I supposed to have faith in it? And then I learned to just, I choose to believe. I choose to have faith. I've just made the decision that I have faith that there is some higher power, God, universe, that is taking care of me and that I will be okay. And like, I feel this sense of ease wash over me if I just pretend to like actually believe that for a moment. And if I pretend to actually believe that enough, I actually believe it. So there's belief in the self, and then there's also belief in the higher power. And then I also, in these moments where I can see myself, especially in a moment of high stress or where I feel vulnerable, like if I get fired, if this CEO or this board chooses to fire me because I'm not turning around the company the way that they needed me to on a fast enough timeline, that's going to cut into my finances. And we have a plan for that money. And the plan is going to get changed, and I'm going to have to change the plan, and it's going to make me uncomfortable, and I don't know what's going to happen. And that freaks me out. And that's all running through my mind when I get this email. And then I can pause and see that happening, and I can ask myself, what lesson is life trying to teach me right now? What lesson am I supposed to be listening and tuning into right now?
I look at it now too as not just what lesson, but maybe what path is it redirecting me to? I have a perfect example of, I had a potential client come in here. He was wanting to maybe start a YouTube channel. We had pitched him on a whole year-long contract of what we would do for him. He was on board. Then 2 weeks later, kind of backed out. And that was going to be the contract or the client that allowed me to bring on my assistant full-time, or almost full-time, but it would have allowed me to get some help in here and be able to afford it, which I was very much looking forward to. One would say I might have been somewhat attached to it. So he backed out. Couldn't bring the assistant on board. Didn't happen. One small thing that happened is another person ended up coming in to shoot her YouTube videos here, which we seem to connect with a little better. So in a way, kind of replaced him. Now, a week ago, that client that didn't sign, he contacted me for a different business opportunity. He was like, you're the first person I thought of when this came up, which was kind of surprising to me that he thought of me first. He's like, yeah, I've spent the last week trying to figure out how I want to pitch this to you. Well, that's cool. I don't know why I'm your guy, but yeah, let's do this. Let's figure it out. So was that the reason I met him? Was that the reason he came in here, and as opposed to being a YouTube client? Maybe it's this thing that I'm going to do with him. And that's also what I've learned. Where is the universe sort of like pointing you? What direction? Like if you can stay detached from the feelings of, oh, this isn't happening. It's fucking up my plan. It's going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to push me through this, all this change. I'm not going to have the money. If you can just have faith that, oh, this actually means there's something else for me coming up, which is really, really hard to do in those situations where it's, for lack of a better word, kind of fucking up your life at that moment. But if you've done that enough, if you've gone through enough of those things, then you're just sort of like, okay, I can let that go.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a hard thing to do until you've done it a lot. And every time you have to let something go, if you're continuing to grow, it's like a new level of letting something go. It's tougher.
It's a new level of hard.
For an easy, let's just use a financial analogy. Let's say I had to let go of a $500 client, and now it's like, oh, I had to let go of a $5,000 client. That's a big difference.
Then it becomes a $500,000 client and a $5 million client and a $50 million client.
It's never going to end.
Stops.
It's never stops.
And it feels intense every time, and you feel equally wrapped up in it. And it's just like learning to refine our own human instrument. And that's the mind, body, spirit, like you're talking about.
Yeah. And the mind wants to get you wrapped up in it so fast. It will take you down in a heartbeat. If there's any advice I can give to anybody, it's recognize the second your mind wants to take you down this deep, dark path, whatever the situation is. Maybe it's yours where it was a tough email. Maybe it's mine where I lose a client. And all of a sudden you're 60 thoughts deep in this rabbit hole of like, fuck this, fuck that. I don't want to do this. I want to give up. I can't believe this client left me. I can't believe this person sent me this email. And then all of a sudden you spent how much energy in those thoughts, and then you got to pull yourself out of it and realize, oh, that was just my mind wrapping me up in this whole situation to tell me all the negative things that are going on, when really I could easily find something positive about the situation. You can always find a silver lining.
And that is the thing that is within your control.
Exactly.
That's the constructive thread that you have to find within all of the mental bullshit that's happening. And if you can just grab onto that thread, then you just keep pulling on that. And that's how you're able to turn the situation.
And it'll lead you to a different manifestation route too.
Yeah.
All manifestation starts with thought. So if you're sitting there in this rabbit hole, wormhole of horrible, horrible thoughts, you're not going to find that way out to start a new manifestation. Like, okay, I lost this client. That happened. Big deal. Let's move on to whatever the next thing I want to manifest.
It makes me think like you will always find what you're looking for. And if
confirmation bias,
it's confirmation bias, and you can use that to your advantage, right?
Yeah.
Like you can just always look for the negative in the situation, or you can find like, what am I listening for here?
Yeah.
What am I looking for here? There is some grain of positivity or constructiveness that I can grasp onto here. Oftentimes, if it's not obvious, that's where the big pause comes in. What I'm supposed to do is I'm just supposed to pause. And if I combine that with a sense of faith, it will appear. Yep. I just have to give it the space to appear.
Strength of will and strength of mind to not allow that negative thought to snowball. I always think of limitless potential. I think it's sometimes an abstract idea or an abstract definition of what that actually is. And I've thought about this a lot. And to me, we all have limitless potential, whatever it might be. We could literally go out and create anything if we actually just put our mind to it. But for me, it's how or will I access that limitless potential when I come up with an idea or come up with something that I want to do. Is my first thought, that very first initial thought, is it something that's going to put me in that direction to create that? Or is it something that is going to limit me and hold me back? I think your limitless potential expands and grows and evolves when your first thought is, yes, I can do this, let's figure out. Then all of a sudden it's like 20, 30, 40 different thoughts start coming in of how you can make this happen. Like when this guy called me about this business potential, my first thought wasn't like, oh man, how are we, like, this is going to be tough. Like, how are we going to get this shipped here? What are we going to, like, man, he's over there, I'm here. I don't even really know him that well, but can we make this work? Like, if those are my thoughts, then there's not going to be this spider web of new thoughts that allow me to see the vision of how I can actually create this and make it happen. Instead, I was like, yeah, let's do this. And my thoughts immediately went to, well, who can I connect with? Who else can help me make this happen? Who do I need to talk to? Where do I need to go? What's the first step that I have to do to make this happen? And then it becomes much easier to see that vision, because then you're just taking the first initial steps, like, oh, do this, do this, do this. And then I might want to do this. But if that doesn't work, let's try this. You have to be very careful with that first initial thought. That first one is so important. If it's any sort of negative, limiting position you're putting yourself in, you're going to miss out on so many other potential thoughts that lead you to actually creating and manifesting that thing that you want.
What do you do if you are caught up in that web of negative thoughts, though? I draft the email with, with the negative thoughts. And then I can look back at it in a couple of hours and be like, dude, that's fucking nasty. You're not sending that. That's not you. That's not how you want to show up in the world. I was talking to you about it the other day, which is like, when do I let the beast live? Right? Like, I'm not a perfect human being, right? I have all the negative thoughts, right? I have all the self and other judgmental thoughts. I'm a human being. Mm-hmm. All my first thoughts are not always the positive, constructive thoughts.
100%.
And so, like, in this moment, I will write that shit down. And once I can see it and get it out of here, I'm like, I don't want to be that. And it gives me hard evidence to be like, okay, let me choose something different. Yeah. But it's very hard for me personally to choose the positive and constructive if I can't. Maybe it's because I'm visual, but if I can't see, like, that's what's happening in your mind, you need to fucking work on that, dude.
You're so much better at writing it down than me. I should probably consider taking up that method. Typically, I usually just let it out to Casey. Like, again, maybe it's about a client or something. I had one a couple weeks back that I was just like, fuck this. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm like, I got to have a boundary with this woman. I'm not going to keep giving free advice. I don't even want to work with her anymore. Yeah. Why is she even doing this? If she doesn't want to like grow this channel, then what's the point of even being in here? Like all the things. I'm like, she's trying to hire free help. And of course it's not going to grow the channel because you've got these people in here that don't even have the right energy that they want to put towards the YouTube. I'm like, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'll just find a new client. Literally, I'll be on a phone call with Casey and just say all those things. And I'm like, she's like, are you done?
Yeah, are you done? I think that's just as helpful. And then I'm like, man, I don't even believe what I'm saying. Like, that sounded ridiculous.
It sounded so ridiculous. I sound
so fucking stupid right now. Like, okay, well, thank you for letting me air that out. Like, I'm gonna go do something different.
And then exactly what happened or similar to what happened with you with the email, I then have a call with that client like later that day, and I was just like, hey, look, this is what I'm feeling about the situation. This is what I want to do. This is where kind of like my boundary needs to be. So just let me know when you're ready to like take this further. And she's like, okay.
Okay. So let's talk about this, right? Like what we're talking about right now is recognizing what we're feeling so that we can choose to behave differently, right? And so I sent you that video maybe yesterday or a couple of days ago where Chelsea Handler's like ripping on these dudes that signed up for like this alpha male boot camp where it's like these pseudo Navy SEAL instructors are just like, you know, ragging on these dudes. There was a video of dragging this guy through the mud. He's like, I'm not going to stop dragging you until you fight back. And, you know, it's like these grown ass men that are signing themselves up to get hazed because they're trying to find like a sense of manhood. And Chelsea Handler's roasting them. And I'm like, okay, what do I think about this? And I agree with potentially the ultimate objective, which is to find that sense of strength. What he said, like you're getting dragged through the mud. Damn right, you better have a sense and ability to fight back. Yeah. Like I'm not getting dragged through the fucking mud here. Like I'm gonna fight back. But the method of teaching is, it's almost like the message is you should never feel this bad emotion. Like you are a man. You're not supposed to cry. You're a man. And then I don't know if I sent you this other guy's profile, Jason Wilson, and his profile is full of videos where he's a martial artist. He has a dojo and he invites sons and fathers to his dojo. And he'll do the same situation where he'll stand in between a son and his father, and he'll tell the father that you need to get through to me to get to your son who's in danger on the other side. And because he's trained, he can stop the dads. He can stop you from getting to Atlas, and he's going to break you down. And a lot of the dads, like, they'll get visibly just like flustered and frustrated, and you can see that they feel awful about themselves. And he'll pause and he'll say, what are you feeling right now? And they'll, you know, he gets them and he gives them permission to, like, some will break down and cry. Like, I feel shame. I feel weak. And he's like, okay. That's okay. That's what you feel. Why do you feel shame? Why do you feel weak? Because, like, I want to get to my son, but I can't get through. I can't get to my son. And he's like, okay, that's what you feel right now. Use that as your fuel. Now let's run it back. Yeah. And they work through it. And so it's this version A, which is like, you're a man. You're never going to feel this. You're just a machine. Versus, and those people end up expressing their anger. It comes out sideways in all kinds of ways because they're playing pseudo-alpha when really it's a tough exterior, but they're just mush inside because they don't know how to deal with it. Versus version B, where maybe it's okay to cry. Maybe it's okay to tell Casey or whoever, like, I'm sad. I fucking hate this. This makes me feel less than. Or you calling me and telling me, like, how you feel about certain things that you're going through right now. Like, that could be perceived as vulnerable and weak, or even what we're doing on this podcast right now. But there's so much strength on the other side of saying, this is how I feel right now. And then you get to move beyond it. And I feel like that is honestly probably the point of what we're doing here on this podcast, which is, like, as men, we feel, and also we can move through it by identifying it. Yeah. So that's my rant on that.
My big spiritual mentor, it's, yes, feel what you're going to feel, identify it, and then what are you going to do about it? Exactly. Like, you don't need to, we're guys, we're men. It's fine to feel, but at a certain point, you don't want to sit in those emotions forever. Like, figure out what it is and move on. Totally. And take some action. Totally. So I think that just comes with a self-reflective practice of some sort. You know, you talking about the more alpha male boot camp thing. Again, if you just simplify it and break it down to what is the energy that's going into this process for the men? And it's exactly what you said. It's this pseudo-alpha exterior hard shell. You got to just get through this, not have these emotions, be a man, be masculine. And then all that ends up doing is putting over another sheet of armor on these men. And they haven't done any of the interior work that they need to do. And so 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the road, that's going to all come out again. Sideways. Super sideways. And again, that's not to say you need to be a man and go to therapy for 5 years and talk about your feelings and do all these things forever and ever and ever. There's that balance. There's that middle pillar of the two, which I did it. I went to therapy for 3 years and it was great. It was fantastic. I had to figure out a lot of shit about myself as to why I was doing what I was doing. But then at some point I couldn't like just wallow in those feelings anymore. I couldn't just keep victimizing myself of the trauma that I had in my childhood. And your mind can wrap you up in trying to process and process and process. I think I see that with a lot of people where, oh, well, I need to process this trauma. I need to process this. This went on in my childhood. There's always going to be something new to process. Mm-hmm. But have you done the work to be able to like quickly get through it or to be able to like process in real time? You know, with the eclipse that happened and the thing that I kind of had to get through, and maybe it's something I'll talk about on a future podcast, but it took me a little longer to kind of process what was actually going on. Maybe like a week. I was like, what is really happening here? I actually described it as I was being like a depressed sloth for like a week. I'm also a Cancer, so I'm a little more watery and I get into my emotions a little more. But ultimately I did snap out of it because I had to figure out what exactly it was that was happening, that was bringing me down, that was making me frustrated or making me sad. And it wasn't until I identified that, okay, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling fraudulent. I'm feeling also upset at myself about things. I'm feeling shame about this. I'm feeling guilt, all these things. This is why it happened. This is why I'm having these feelings. And now what the fuck am I going to do about it? Mm-hmm. How am I going to move through it and get over it and not just like sweep it under the rug, get over it, but process it and be like, okay, I figured out what that is attached to. Now I can actually let it go and move forward. What do you do to really like, outside of writing it down, is that your best way of truly letting it go?
That's my fast way of rebounding. And also like I make sure to have friends that I can share my shit with. What you started the episode with, like being able to share a vulnerability with Heather and also communicating like, hey, you can feel safe right now. And also I'm feeling all kinds of weird shit right now. Like, for example, younger me, when we started dating, early 20s, like if I got the email that I got, I would have quit. I would have fucking fuck this. And it would have affected our finances, and I would have run with all the excuses. I would have been like, that wasn't fucking right for me anyways. And I would have got mad at her, Heather, my wife, for being like, so you want me to work in a job where like I'm fucking miserable and like I'm not
treated
appreciated.
This way.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah.
And that would have made her feel unsafe.
Yeah.
Versus now where it's like, hey babe, I want you to know that I'm committed to like leaving this situation better than I found it, and I'm not going to do anything hasty. Okay, you good with that? All right. I'm gonna tell you
and
like, all the fucking
I gotta let
bullshit right now.
Yeah.
This is fucking bullshit.
I know. I think Casey's starting to understand that a little better about me now, like understanding that masculine side of me that's like, I just let me rant about this for 15 minutes so I can get it out, and then that way I don't take it back into work with me or anything like that, or take it back to the client.
Yeah.
Like she's so good at she does not let other people affect her at all. She's so good at it. And I would say I definitely don't let it like affect my life or affect my state of being longer than maybe like 10 or 15 minutes that I need to just like get it out. Maybe like a day, depending on the client or something like that. Or if I need to kind of figure out what's going on with me, that like, why is this bothering me so much? But man, a North Star for not letting other people's actions affect you, it's Casey.
Well, she's got a YouTube channel, everybody, so you can go and watch that.
Yeah.
My last final thought is like the benefit of, for me, I'm a massive internal processor. That's probably why I go to writing first. Like I'm in a way keeping it to myself still.
And I'm an external processor.
Which
Casey and I have talked about, which is why I need to like shout it out sometimes.
So maybe you could afford to write a little more and I could afford to verbalize it a little bit more. The benefit of when I do verbalize it with Heather is I get to hear myself. I may not say it in the moment. In fact, because I'm an internal processor, I'll walk away from the conversation and she'll think that that's how I still actually feel. And a couple days later, I'll tell her like where I'm at with the situation. And she's like, oh, really? Because I thought that's how you feel. I'm like, no, I heard myself talking to you. And I was like, what a whiny little bitch. Like, that's not it. I don't agree with all the stuff that came out of my mouth. Like, that's what I was feeling, but I didn't want to choose to have that belief anymore. Like, I chose to rise above it. And that's it's a funny thing that happens with us constantly. She's like, oh, so you actually think this now? I'm like, yes, because you gave me the space to air out my dirty laundry grievances, and I that gave me the path to choose something better.
Yeah.
So
I had to be careful with mine, one last thing, because what I recognized recently that I had to sort of move past was there was a fine line of me airing it out and just sort of letting it go and moving on, as opposed to this younger 12-year-old self that was arguing with his dad and justifying his actions and defending himself and all these things. So it was something I had to recognize that, thank God, a few people reflected it back to me. I was like, oh yeah, there's a difference between like, hey, I need to just get this out and let it go, as opposed to this like 12-year-old boy coming to the surface that's acting really fucking immature about this right now. And like what you say, acting like a little bitch about it, as opposed to, oh no, I just need to get this energy out of me real fast and move on from it. And there's a better way to express those same feelings in a much more mature way than how I was doing it previously. A big thing that I had to grow and evolve from was there was a point where I felt like Casey was almost saying like, you don't need to express these emotions. And there was part of me that wanted to be like, maybe she's right. Maybe I don't need to express them, but I'm also like, I'm a man. I need to kind of get these out. I'm also, like I said, a Cancer. So I process externally. I need to share I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I need to do it in a more mature way. Don't be a fucking 12-year-old boy when I'm talking about these things. And that was like a hard thing to admit as a 42-year-old man right now that, and again, it's not like it was happening all the time, and not to make excuses, but when it did happen, I could feel it and see it happening in real time. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And why am I not stopping it?
Totally. Yeah.
Like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
And so that was, I think, a big thing that happened over the course of the last like 2-3 weeks of a release of this 12-year-old boy is fine and he doesn't need to defend himself anymore. So let that shit go and act like a goddamn adult when you're processing your emotions.
Act like a goddamn adult. That's the name of this episode. How to act like a goddamn adult in 2024.
Yeah. There's a way to be a man. I loved, who's the guy you sent me, the martial arts guy?
Jason Wilson.
Jason Wilson. I watched some of his stuff, and I've actually seen his stuff come up on my reels and whatnot. One of his quotes really resonated with me. He's like, how do you define a man? And he's like, you don't. The second you define a man and you put him into a box, and then those are the only things that he can be. He's like, a man will be anything that's needed at any given moment. And I love that, because mine used to be, and still is, you can be anything and nothing. It's what's needed in that moment. And that's what I've come to learn with Casey and being in a marriage and growing, is you kind of need to be nothing at times too, which is just sit there and listen and let her talk about her emotions and just be there and be there to support and not bring my own stuff into it, or be everything that's needed at any given moment.
Love that.
Yeah.
Be what the moment needs.
Yeah. That's, to me, what being a man is. And that's something that was never taught to me ever.
Yeah, that was sick.
Yeah.
I love that quote. That feels like a really good place to wrap. If you liked the episode of two dudes talking about their feelings, hit that like button, subscribe, share with somebody that you think might appreciate this message or take something from it. And we'll see you in the next one.
Love you, buddy.
See you, man.
Peace.